John Gorst, how's it going?
Sorry about that, John.
My interview today is with John Gorst, Chairman and CEO of IONIC Brands. They recently went public on the CSE April 2nd, 2019, under the symbol IONC. John Gorst has built, led, and sold 4 different technology companies with market values up to $600 million. He has raised a total of $30 million for those past businesses, is the largest early investor in IONIC, and has been at the helm throughout IONIC's founding and expansion into Washington's leading vape company. IONIC Brands Corp. is a multi-state operator that manufactures brands and distributes premium cannabis products. So, John, welcome today. How are things? How long have we known each other?
Oh, gosh. I think it's been about 15 years since we were working in the tech industry, if I'm not mistaken.
I think Thinkware and when I was at Intuit. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. It's been a journey.
John, I coach my clients on pitch decks. I show them how to get crystal clear because the human brain's attracted to clarity, what it knows, and to be concise. Investors are drawn to projects that they understand the fastest and how to connect. Stories about challenges, people, success after failure. So within the last year, you and I were on a number of phone calls, a number of times with investors, and the conversion ratio is pretty high. You included all these ingredients. What I'd like to hear is just share your pitch, what you've done, when you're on the phone call with a couple of investors.
Yeah, so basically the way, I start out with the company and the explanation of where we've been, where we're going. And the way it starts is this. So the company was founded by my son about 7.5 years ago. So it was started in family roots, so rooted in family. He started growing in the medical business in Washington State. I was one of the early investors in his company. Him and his buddies very quickly discovered that they didn't have green thumbs, that their thumbs were in fact brown. So they came back to me after their experiment with growing. They had grown about 100 pounds of biomass in cannabis. Unfortunately, it wasn't. They weren't able to sell it into the Washington market because of the quality wasn't high enough. So another friend of theirs approached him and said, "Hey, let's try to extract the essential oils out of the plant." This is when nicotine vaping was really just catching on, and they had thought, "Hey, let's do a vape product." So I invested in a small extractor for them, botanical extractor, and they came back to me in about 3 months. And they had sold 7,000 of these half-gram cartridges in the medical market in the state of Washington. So that obviously got my attention. I then quickly reached out to a longtime friend of mine, Christian Struzan, who is our chief marketing officer today, who has 30 years of experience in building brands, has worked on all the major motion pictures in Hollywood for the last 30 years, has worked on brand campaigns with Beck, Stellatory, a lot of InBev products. So he started working on developing a brand strategy for us. And then in 2013, December, we went out and applied for our recreational license in the state of Washington. During this period of time, my son and his friends, his buddies, were all out selling these cartridges in the medical market. Meantime, I was continuing to invest in the business. I brought another partner in, Andy Shell. We invested additional capital and sitting at the board level at the time, not really involved in the day-to-day operations. And we received our recreational license in August of 2015. And the boys, as I referred to them, went out and sold about $275,000 worth of product in the recreational market in Q4 of 2015. They did $2.4 million in 2016. 4.7 million in 2017, and then last year, 2018, we did 9.9 million, with approximately 96% of that revenue being generated out of Washington. So, to answer your point, any good pitch, it has to have a good story. Obviously, fundamentals are important. So, in talking about fundamentals, the first thing that I move to is management. So when I talk about myself and my partners, we what we key in on is our experience. Obviously, my experience in 29 years in tech, starting 7 companies, exiting 4 of those, 2 through private equity, taking one company public in the .com balloon, if you will, in February 2000, just as the market was about to crash or did crash.
I know that time period. Yeah.
My timing wasn't impeccable on that. but I had started the first one of the first cloud computing companies in December 1997, before cloud computing was cloud computing. So, I've had my failures, I've had my successes. I managed that public company for 7 years, and then eventually through a successful exit. So my partner, Andy Schell, who was also a key investor in the seed rounds, had a successful exit, built a company to $50 million in revenue, sold to private equity. And even our chief marketing officer, he has a successful exit, or two of them actually under his belt, where he built an ad agency and exited, and then also a tech company in the online publishing software business. So all of the major core leaders of the company have successful exits under their belt, and that speaks volume to our ability to execute, our knowledge of business and what it takes to take a company from its infancy stage to maturity. I jumped on board in September of 2017 full-time as the chairman and CEO to prepare the company to get institutionalized, to go out and raise outside capital. So it's about the story. It's about the heritage of the product, the where it started, where it came from, some of the trials and tribulations that a company goes through before it reaches a successful plateau.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, you're focused. There's so much weight put on your traction so far, but it's the executives behind it that can execute. And that's what I tell everybody that comes to me and said, look, you got to show some traction, and you've got to be able to show that you can execute on this vision you have.
That's what it boils down to. At the end of the day, that's what investors are investing in, right? It's the people that are at the helm, the people that are executing, that are carrying that weight, and that's what you're investing in, is that expertise and experience, that commitment, that passion. So that plays a very important role in the overall story and how you sell it and how you pitch it to investors.
I just mentioned earlier that you went public on April 2nd. Now, did you have any challenges through the process to IPO? What you had to build, put into place, maybe some events that you had to overcome that just were unknowns?
Well, from the beginning in cannabis in the U.S. market, you're constantly challenging with compliance, regulations and compliance that change from state to state, market to market. So being a multi-state operator in itself is extremely challenging. Raising capital, raising rounds of financing, going through these different rounds, knowing when to put capital to work, when to pull back, when to invest, when to expand. So it's a constant, catch and release, if you will, in terms of capital and when you raise it and the timing of it. Then, of course, you have the IPO or going public process. It's especially difficult when you are taking a company public in another country, as we did in Canada, which are referred to as cross-border transactions. So not only are you dealing with compliance and securities regulations in Canada, but we were dealing with securities regulations in the U.S. So all of your costs are basically doubled up in terms of legal, auditing, accounting. So it is a tremendous amount of work, fraught with a lot of hidden problems and blockers. But, a good management team and a good leadership group should be able to pivot and navigate those challenges, which we did.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, were there any negative events that came up? But I think the way you answered it, management always expects the unexpected. And how did they solve them? They go, well, we just rationalize it and then just segment it down and look for solutions.
Right. You have to press on. You got to press forward, right? And so, in our case, the timing of our RTO, we had anticipated that we would have closed it November 1st of 2018. Obviously, as you mentioned earlier, we didn't close that and go public until April 2nd of this year. So again, we had to go out and raise more capital. We had to raise bridge financing in the middle of the worst downturn in the cannabis sector, which was end of November, all of December, and the beginning of January. We were fortunate to get a nice bounce back up prior to us actually going public, which we've seen some appreciation in our stock. But again, it's, all of these curveballs are constantly thrown at you that you have to navigate and pivot correctly in order to succeed.
Yeah. So what do you think you've learned in the last year that will inform this company in the next year? I mean, is there any big lessons?
Lessons are, from my perspective, in taking a company public in the past and having my successful exits and having my failures as well. and growing from those. There really wasn't anything that was, for me personally, was unexpected, other than, ups and downs of the cannabis market, the volatility of the market, the uncertainty of the market. When you talk about raising capital, I mean, you have news flashes or news cycles where you have attorneys general our country that are against legalization of cannabis, and then in 2 weeks you'll have an upswing or change in opinion that can sway a market in the positive or in the negative. I think that was and continues to be the biggest challenge and really the biggest vulnerability for our business, our industry, let alone our company. It's the constantly changing opinions of the public. It's the opinions of politicians, regulators, etc., that really pose the biggest challenges to our business.
I heard you say vulnerability. Is mentioning all those risks, could be legal, could be political, could be a number of risks, and what do you think the biggest vulnerability is?
I mean, other than the fact that we're a new company, I refer to IONIC Brands Corp as an upstart company now, not so much a startup, but we're in the upstart phase. We're a multi-state operator. We're working to develop hard systems that run our businesses regionally and eventually nationally, with the end goal of being international. That's what we're focused on right now.
Your phrase of mind, it took a lot longer. You started in November, thought you were going to go in November, but it ended up April. What was the mental perspective required to raise money in sub-receipts, to go public, and then to IPO?
Yeah, the first thing that one has to do before you even begin to think about, starting a company, raising capital for a company, is your mental preparedness. You have to be ready to endure a substantial amount of stress, constant change, constant blockers, constant changes in your numbers and your projections and the growth of your business. And so it's just being persistent. It's being prepared to be absolutely committed, to be passionate, to be 110% committed to what you're doing. And you don't take no for an answer. When I go into a meeting where I'm pitching bankers, investment bankers, or funds, or whoever it might be, I'm just mentally prepared. I know my numbers. I know my story. I know it by heart. My position going in is that there's nobody that's going to be able to stump me when it comes to answering questions or challenges that may be presented to me. So an absolute mental acuteness and preparedness to be able to maneuver and navigate through those capital raising instances.
Are you disappointed by anything in the process?
Oh, that's a good question. Am I disappointed? Looking back on it, I can't say that I am right now. It's been a learning experience. I wouldn't trade it for anything right now. And really, that's how I look at my entire business career. As in everything has happened for a reason. Things continue to happen for a reason. And again, just being mentally prepared to overcome and to overachieve. And if you've got that take no prisoners attitude about business and raising capital and growing your business, assuming that you have a successful business model, product, etc., you're going to win. So it's just a matter of persistence. It's a matter of sticking with it. It's a matter of understanding the details of your business and knowing the story, sticking to your story, and repeating that story over and over again to the point to where perception becomes reality, and before you know it, you're sitting on top of a very successful company.
I was going to ask the question, what sets IONIC apart? And I think that was just revealed in your previous answer.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I mean, again, what sets us apart is our story. It's our brand. We don't go off message. We stick to it. We're persistent. Time in. If there's anything that, going back to one of your earlier questions, actually, about when, challenges, personal challenges, what can become really challenging is the fact that you're repeating yourself over and over and over again. And if anything, you might get a little bored. But it's so important to stay on message, to stay on topic, to be able to passionately communicate your strategy and vision. And I think that that's what set us apart in the market. I just returned from a very successful roadshow last week all through Canada. I don't believe we had one fund or one banker that turned us down or that did not participate in an upcoming round of financing. So at the end of the day, when you finish those road shows and spend, 100 hours, 150 hours on the road pitching and talking, it can become arduous and repetitive. But it pays off in the end.
I think that's great. There's a lot of sales to this where you've got to be at your best 100% of the time, 100% of the day, all day.
No, absolutely. John, the thing that's one of the, again, a challenge, a personal challenge is just being up for that. Every time you go into a meeting, you're hopping, you're spending 30 minutes to 45 minutes per meeting. You hop in a car, you go to the next one and the next one, the next one. And you may not feel up to it. You've been up since 4:30 in the morning. You didn't go to bed till midnight, and you got to put yourself in that mental frame of mind of success. And you have to have energy, and you have to display high energy, because at the end of the day, it requires a tremendous amount of energy to build a successful company.
Yeah. So let's switch a little bit. What's your position or feeling on this monopoly land grab as far as acquisitions? There's a recent article by Steve White at Harvest said they're going to acquire companies faster and better. And the only way that you could do that actually better is just to offer more money to the acquiring company. I mean, do you have a perspective on that?
Yeah, we've made about 6 acquisitions over the last 7 months. M&A, while it's important, it is not strategic to our business. It's not at our core. Our story centers around organic growth and building the company from the bottom up, not the top down. I would only caution anybody that is focused on M&A to remember that 80% of all acquisitions that are made are non-accretive. They end up failing, actually. So we see a lot of the M&A story out there in the market. That's one of the things that sets us apart from others that are raising capital. Everybody's centered around mergers and acquisitions and making these strategic acquisitions, which do have a part. They play a part in your business, and they can be important, but they must be strategic. M&A for the sake of M&A is not a business strategy. For us, it's about organic growth. And regarding the war chest, obviously, it's a constant. You're out there, we're on the road, we're raising capital. It is a land grab right now. What we're focused on is owning the West and winning the rest. And we can own the top 4 markets of the top 10 in the United States. We believe that we're going to achieve $1 billion market valuation. So at the end of the day, that's what we're setting ourselves up for, but we're laser focused on our business and our core values and our core strategy, which is organically building the business, not through M&A, but through hard work.
That's great. That leads me into, where are you headed with IONIC Brands? What's your finish line? Are you going to stay with this long term or right off to the sunset after somebody offers you?
Yeah, look at it. It depends. Number one, as long as I'm having fun, I'm passionate about what I'm doing, and I'm creating value for shareholders, I'll stay as long as I can. In terms of IONIC, obviously business changes constantly, especially when you're involved in an ever-changing landscape like cannabis, the industry of cannabis, and the opportunities that are abound everywhere. So the finish line for us is to build a multi-billion-dollar brand strategy, a portfolio, cannabis vaping assets or brands that occupy the premium and luxury cannabis space, and the luxury the space that hasn't yet been defined, which we are working to define this year. And that's really the next leg for us, is moving from the premium volume category and cannabis brands to the luxury category. And we have some really cool announcements that we'll be making in the coming weeks and months regarding that strategy. But really building a premier and premium luxury portfolio of brands for the cannabis industry.
How can investors get involved? You want to tell us about it, where they can go?
Yeah, look, it's not the easiest. It's not, easy for people in the U.S. to acquire stocks in Canada. Interactive Brokers, Ameritrade, those are a couple of trading platforms that will allow you to buy stock on the CSE. Our company name is IONIC Brands. Our ticker is IONC, and that is on the Canadian Stock Exchange. You can use a couple of those different platforms for buying and selling Canadian stock. Do
you have plans to graduate to an American stock exchange? Let's say that prohibition drops.
Yeah, we're getting prepared to list right now on OTCQX. That'll probably be in the next 60 to 90 days. So that'll make it more easier. It'll allow for IONIC Brands Corp to be more accessible to U.S. shareholders and investors. So we're really looking forward to that and bringing that liquidity and notoriety to our company. That will hopefully, we'll get that done. And like I said, in the next 90 to 120 days, which will make us more readily available to U.S. shareholders.
Well, I appreciate the time, John. Thanks it was a pleasure working with you over the last year, and I wish all the best in the future.
Hey, John, thank you. Likewise.
All right. We'll talk soon. Cheers.